Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Sunday. Today we're talking about something that if you're not doing right now, I guarantee you're missing out, and that is buying Crested Geckos. Now before you go down to the comments and start saying, but Sam, the Crested Gecko market is crashing, prices keep falling, everything's uncertain, why would I buy Crested Geckos right now? Dislike. Hear me out on this, okay? If you haven't seen my Why is the Crested Gecko Market Crashing video, I highly suggest watching that and coming back. However, I'm going to give you a 1-minute brief summary of that video. Essentially, I addressed people's concerns about the Crested Gecko market crashing. I suggested that it was just correcting from where we are at. And for those of you who don't know, in the 2020 through 2022 years, there was a huge influx in the number of people breeding Crested Geckos, so that pushed the supply way up. And now that that's kind of hype has died down, we're seeing more of a crash, in quotes, where prices have fallen a lot, which they have. The number of people selling off their collections has increased more than it was the last couple of years. And there's a lot of, I would say, people who are scared, people who are worried, and there's a lot of uncertainty floating around in the Crested Gecko world, which is also probably not helping prices. So that was the main point of that video. But today we're talking about something I didn't cover in that video in a lot of depth, and that is why now is literally the best time to buy Crested Geckos in the last 3.5, 4 years. Like I mentioned in my crash video, prices were super high. The demand was super high, so prices were super high all of 2020, 21, 22, I would say. So really the last 3 years. This year they've started to come down more to normal. However, things have came down substantially from where they were the last couple of years. So if you're someone who's been sitting on the sidelines, kind of waiting to jump into some projects, now is an excellent time and is literally the cheapest it's been since basically 2019, so like 4 years ago. And I wanted to give you some examples of this today and why now is a great time to be buying Crested Geckos. And kind of also why you should not be afraid of buying them. And the future, I think, is pretty certain, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But let me give you a good example here. Now, we're not going to go too in depth into the numbers in this video because I wanted to talk about it more in a different video. But for example, let's pick a project. Let's say you wanted to work with cappuccinos and you wanted to create frappuccinos. Just to give you an example of what that would have cost you last year, the average cap was going for, I would say, 8 to 10 for a baby. And if you wanted to create a frap, you would also need a lily white. So you could pick up a decent baby lily white for probably 600 to 700 or so. So all in, to get one cap and one baby lily white to create frappuccinos, you would have been looking at anywhere from about 9 to 12 grand, depending on how nice of a lily and a cap you wanted to go. And that was for babies, keep in mind, okay? So this year you can pick up a baby cap for anywhere between $400 to $600, and you can pick up a similar lily white for probably still about 5 to 7, depending on how nice you want to go. So what would have cost you, 9 to 12 last year is going to cost you about $1,000. Maybe $1,200 this year. So that's about 90% cheaper to start a Frappuccino project this year than it was last year. And let's talk about fraps a little bit. If you want to go right to fraps, you can pick up a baby frap for as low as about $1,200 at the time of this recording, and you can get some nicer ones for around $2,000. So that would have also ran you probably 8 to 15, depending on how nice you wanted to go last year. So that's also like an 80% decrease, but that's good. If you wanted to work with this project, you could literally start just about any project that you want and get multiple geckos for less than $5,000. Another good example would be Axanthics. Last year, 2 baby visual Axanthics would have ran you anywhere between about maybe 15 to 20, give or take, depending on how nice they were. Now you can pick up 2 baby Axanthics. At the time of this recording, there's some on MorphMarket for $2,000. Meaning you could get 2 visual baby Axanthics for $4,000, which is about $11,000 cheaper than last year. So if that was something you were waiting to jump on, you could easily do it this year. Now, I don't want to go too much into that because I kind of want to talk about it in a different video about something else. But anyway, the point is you can create just about any project you can imagine with any of the new morphs for less than $5,000, which is a far cry from what it would have cost you just last year. So it's a great time if you've been on the sidelines waiting to start a project. Now is an excellent time to do so. Another advantage you have this year as a buyer is that since the market's cooled off and people are a little bit more hesitant to buy, dealers are willing to negotiate to move animals. So if you've been eyeing something up and it's been for sale for a while, if you shoot them an offer, they're probably more likely to take it this year than they ever were in the last couple of years. And so that's another advantage of buying Crested Geckos this year. And I just want to put out a quote here. I think this was from Warren Buffett that said, be greedy when people are fearful and be fearful when people are greedy. And I think a lot of us have learned from that. Last year, buying geckos at all-time high pricing, and this year I could pick up half the animals I bought for probably 50% less than I spent last year. So this is a great time to buy in that case too. I could have started a lot more projects and saved a lot more money than if I was buying last year. The last advantage I wanted to talk to you about buying right now is that we just came off of this super high rush, right? Where prices were super high, demand was super high, everything was just crazy. And now we've came kind of more down to normal, and people are very concerned, people are fearful, people are scared, so prices are really low, right? Well, this is going to end eventually. This will not last forever. And so you could eventually one day start seeing those prices creep back up a little bit. I don't think they'll ever be to where they were before unless we have another major incident in the world that would cause people to be at home again. However, it is highly likely that prices will one day continue to creep up a little bit on certain things, while others will always continue to drop depending on what morph and obviously what it is. However, this is not going to last forever with the kind of valley we're in, or the crash, you could say. Things will recover over time. And if you need data on this, you can just type into Google ball python market crash. And what does that have to do with crested geckos? Well, number one, ball pythons have been around a lot longer than crested geckos have, but also there is more available than there is crested geckos. There's about 40,000 ball pythons available on MorphMarket, which is crazy. In comparison to crested geckos, which are now the number 2 category, where there's almost 5,000, there's about 4,900 and change right now, which means they're more popular than corn snakes, boa constrictors, bearded dragons, anything. Leopard geckos too. So that's a good sign for crested geckos. But you might say, well, that means the market's saturated, which is, up for debate. However, that also means that there's more people interested in working with crested geckos than just about anything else other than ball pythons. And ball pythons are a good example and kind of reference point of how the market works, because if you Google ball python market crash, you'll find articles from 2018, 2010, back in time, right, where people thought it was the end of the world. Some of them are on like forum posts, and people are like, well, all the snakes are going to zero. Nice knowing you guys. And I feel bad for anyone who read those posts and was like, yep, these people are right, and sold off all their snakes. I mean, obviously, ball pythons are still around. People are selling them like never before. There's tons of new morphs. They're still doing great. And the people who sold those are really the people who missed out the most. People who would have just been consistent throughout all the years and not really gave into it. They'd be the ones who are reaping the rewards of their breeding projects and probably of their business as well. And crested geckos are no different. They're another reptile. The interest in them is only growing. Even though it seems like it's coming down, it's just because we are in an abnormal time where demand was super high and things were crazy. But things will continue on like normal. This is going to recover. And so if you're in it for the long haul, now is a great time, an excellent time to start your projects. Now, there is some things that I may not purchase, and I don't mean this in a bad way to anyone selling any of these animals, but it might be a good time to hold off on some specific morphs. Now, obviously, it's hard to come down a lot if they're already not that expensive. For example, an animal to go from 10K to 5K is a 5K drop, but you can't lose $5,000 on a $2,000 animal, if that makes sense. So prices are continuing to fall. If you watched my crash video, I actually referenced a couple pricing in there, and since that video, which was only like 3 months ago, some of the animals have halved in price again. So like Axanthics in that video, I mentioned how there was normal Axanthics selling for like $5,000, I think is what I said. And now there's some that are like $2,500, $2,000. So I may hold off on some of the actual morphs if I was buying. But if you're okay with maybe losing a little bit of money and getting your project started, I would say go for it. I mean, why not? And it's considering that they've already lost like 80 or 90% of their value, you really can't get in at a better time. And things that are always going to be around, like extreme harlequins, red stuff, you know, lily whites are even pretty much at the bottom. You know, that stuff you're not really going to lose a whole lot on. Some of the other morphs I may hold off on. But other than that, really anything right now is great. Just because of how much it's came down. So I hope this video was helpful to you if you've been considering buying some Crested Geckos and starting a new project. Now is a great time. I'm kind of kicking myself that I bought so many geckos last year and not this year, because I could have saved a lot of money and started all my projects that I wanted to. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.